Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, let's talk about One Piece chapter 916. As always, if you have not read that chapter yet, I suggest that you do so because I will be spoiling you. But now that you have, let's begin. This was just a fun chapter of One Piece. Luffy versus the Yokozuna in a sumo wrestling match. Who is the strongest? And of course, by a mile, Luffy. Like, this chapter reminds me, and I think reminds a lot of us, that Luffy is on that next level. He may not be able to take on Kaido just yet, but there's a huge difference between Luffy and every other strong person that exists in the universe. And you know, I feel kind of weird saying this, but Oda's been on record saying that he's excited to draw Wano, and I really got that vibe in this chapter. It just felt really well drawn. When Luffy slapped the Yokozuna, the way that it was depicted was just incredible. I hope it's not blasphemous to say that it just really looked better than normal. Now, there's some things that we can talk about this chapter, but a lot of them are more vaguely related, speculation sort of material. But let's break down where we are in the story right now, what it is that we know, and maybe like where it can go from here, or where we can speculate that it can go from here. Luffy completely crushed the Yokozuna. I don't think that he's gone, but there's no way that he should be able to compete with Luffy ever. Luffy's on another level entirely. And Basil Hawkins suggested the same thing about Hold'em. Hold'em is not in any position, does not have the power level, obviously, to deal with Luffy. In fact, I think Basil Hawkins' reactions is one of the curiosities of this chapter. We can see him in the final panel along with Law and Hold'em and Luffy, and he just looks concerned. My guess is that he's afraid that whatever's going to happen here is going to call Kaido to them. But speaking of Basil Hawkins, his role in the future is still a little bit ambiguous. We don't know what he's going to do, but I just don't see Basil Hawkins being able to take on Law and Zoro and Luffy, and I don't think that he has the allies necessary at all to help him. So unless the Beast Pirates or the Shogun or somebody else strong shows up, right now I don't think that there's anybody that can compete with the heroes. The problem though is that they're trying to rescue Tama, and Tama right now is in the jaws of a stomach lion. But of course Tama's not going to die, so in some way she needs to get out of that situation, or the threat needs to be so severe that they just can't save her, period. Which seems kind of unlikely. It should be noted that Hold'em shouldn't want to kill Tama in the first place because they actually want her abilities. That was the entire reason for capturing her in the first place. It would be very counterintuitive to kill her after capturing her because you need her or want her. So this is looking like to me either going to be a display of just how on the next level Zoro and Luffy and Law and everyone is, and they're just going to defeat everybody, they're going to capture the city, and it's going to bring bigger, badder villains to them. Or those bigger, badder villains are actually going to show up before they make Hold'em and Hawkins look like fools. But at the very least, what we know is that what was supposed to happen was the Struts were supposed to remain inconspicuous, and right now they have completely failed at that. Another thing that I do want to bring up though is that we don't know exactly which city the other Straw Hats were in. Robin and Frankie and Usopp, they very well could be in the city right here that Luffy and Okiku and Zoro just broke into. So they might make an appearance and a reunion here very soon. But yeah, I am really curious as to what occurs next. It still feels really open-ended to me. Oda can do essentially anything that he wants, and I feel like it would work. I would say the most interesting thing that we learned from this chapter was of a thief, a notorious thief called Maru. And so as with pretty much every character in Wano now, I immediately googled the name Maru to see if it relates to any sort of folklore or pop culture or anything like that. And I didn't find anything specifically for Maru. I think that it means, Japanese is a really complex language, it feels like, compared to English. Probably means something along the lines of thief, because there is a character in Cardfight Vanguard named Maru who is also a thief of some kind, so I feel like that the name itself implies what he's being called. Feel free to chime in if you can read Japanese and you happen to have read the Raws. But aside from that, Maru is not a name that I saw on my Google search. The name that instead comes up is Shuten Doji. which is one of the 3 most evil yokai of Japan, an oni who lives in the mountains. Now guys, honestly, I really don't know if there's any connection between Shutenmaru and Shutendoji as far as their story goes, because Shutendoji means little drunkard, and he's an evil oni, and we have a thief who most likely is probably a good guy, given that he seems to at least be at odds with the bad guys, perceived bad guys in the story, the Beast Pirates and the Shogun. But this story actually made a couple things click that I do want to share with you. First of all, there's an interesting trend, which is that evil Japanese mythological creatures in Wano are the good guys. You have a Tengu and Tengu Yama Hitetsu. You have what we think might be some sort of creature, maybe a nine-tailed fox, a kitsune, or, a magical crane in Otsuru, or some sort of shape-shifting creature. Okiku might relate to the story of a ghost. And here we potentially have a connection between another player in Kinemon's fight against the Shogun and an Oni. It's a really interesting twist, I feel like, if this is the case. And I think that it might relate to what Hold'em told us about the Kozuki family in this last chapter. He said that 20 years ago, the Kozuki was an evil family that was going to destroy Wano. It's kind of interesting and weird and strange to think of the Shogun in that way, as obviously Wano's in terrible condition and state now, but maybe 20 years ago he really felt like he was doing the right thing deposing him. And so then any of his allies or anybody who would be carrying on his legacy would be evil mythical creatures, hell-bent on evil. And maybe you can even take this a step further. Maybe this story of Tama is double layered. She is a girl who has the ability to control creatures. And here we have Hold'em and the Beast Pirates capturing her, which is at the moment taking control of the actions of the Straw Hats and their newfound allies, who might be related to mythical creatures. This might be taking a step too far, but this is just something that I've come to expect from Oda's writing. But yeah, let's go back to Shutendoji. And so when you actually read the story of Shutendoji, you might be reminded of a theory, speculation that I had a while ago about Momonosuke. Essentially, Shutendoji was originally just a child, just a person, but it was speculated that he might be the son of a dragon or an oni because he was just that much better at life than everybody else. And so obviously being folklore, there's lots of different interpretations of the story, but long story short, guys, is that eventually he actually transforms into a yokai or a demon. And so the old theory about Momonosuke, as many of you guys will remember, is that Momonosuke is a dragon boy that hatched from the egg on Gold D. Roger's ship, and was entrusted to the care of the person traveling on Roger's ship, Oden Kozuki. This is probably the craziest, most unlikely theory that I actually do believe will happen at this point in time. But I do find some similarities between this theory of Momonosuke and this story of Shutendoji. And so that's interesting. It's almost as if Oda hinted at Shutendoji by creating the character Shutenmaru, just so that we, or the Japanese reader, could re-look up this story itself. So the story is related to Momonosuke, and the name is related to this thief. And this is where we might be able to speculate something that is master tier enough for Eiichiro Oda. As you guys know, Momonosuke's name itself means Peach Boy, and it's related to the story of Momotaro. Essentially, a boy with some friends go and attack the Demon King, the Oni King. So if Momonosuke is in part represented both by Momotaro as well as Shutendoji, that would make him the guy who goes and defeats the King Oni on his island and the Oni King itself. Now obviously a lot of speculation at this point in time. I know a lot of people don't believe that Momonosuke is some kind of dragon boy because it is hard to rationalize, right? He supposedly ate a fake devil fruit which transformed him into a dragon, which would undermine him just being capable of the shape-shifting and transformation itself. But it's just like Oda level enough to share. But you know, as I was researching Shutendoji, another extremely powerful legendary yokai came up. This yokai was called Tamamo no Mae. She was a shapeshifter and a kitsune, a nine-tailed fox. And perhaps an inspiration behind Oda choosing the name Otama, Tamamo Otama. This would be just another allied character with a possible connection to Japanese folklore on yokai. But the story of Tamamo no Mae might also be disconnected from the inspiration behind the name itself. Similar to Shuten Doji, you have Shuten Maru, you have Tama, Otama, and Tamamo. But the actual story of this female shape-shifting kitsune might be related to Otsuru, who we have already previously speculated might be some kind of shapeshifter herself, an actual shapeshifter in the story of One Piece. But obviously the mythology behind the yokai is probably more evil and negative than what we're going to get from Otsuru. Just the same as Momonosuke is not an actual Oni king, that eats people's organs. Anyway guys, aside from this, I don't think that there's a whole lot to say. This last chapter of One Piece was just fun. It's classic One Piece fun. Luffy sumo wrestling in the middle of Kaido's territory, of course. But as always, I'm curious as to what you guys thought about the chapter, whether you noticed something from it that I might have missed. Just share your thoughts. Like the video if you liked the video, dislike the video if you disliked the video. Make sure to subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content. And as always guys, have a wonderful day.